Meet Daniel Sprick, a world-renowned oil painter and one of my greatest art inspirations. Dan lives and works in Denver, Colorado. His work has been collected by the Denver Art Museum, and throughout his career, he's had dozens of solo and group exhibitions at some of the most prestigious galleries in the United States. I had the unique privilege of traveling to San Jose del Cabo with Dan, my twin sister, and a few other artists from our Denver painting group, solely for the purpose of painting every single day. It was a dream come true. Dan is 71 years old, but still does push-ups every day, and he can outlast all of us when painting on location. His persistence, dedication, and mastery of his craft are truly something incredible to behold, and he's one of the kindest and most generous mentors I have ever met. In this candid conversation with Dan, you'll witness him working on a plein air painting near the beach in Mexico, while he shares some wisdom and advice for artists in any medium. Find out why he calls himself a beginner that's been doing this for 50 years, how he distills a scene down to its very essence, how he starts his paintings with a watercolor approach, and why he won't sell his plein air paintings, and so much more. Join us at the beach and listen in.
I have like the most not creative brain ever, so this like really blows my mind.
We're live.
We are live. We're here in Cabo, and it's
Can you believe it?
absolutely beautiful.
Yep.
Inspiration everywhere.
Feels like we're one big family.
You've traveled with other artists, obviously, before, right?
Yeah, a long time ago, I traveled when it was a teaching situation there.
Yeah,
This is so much nicer.
I agree.
Well, I guess I shouldn't say that because it was good teaching, but this, we're really at liberty to do what we want all the time.
Yes, we can paint whatever we want, whenever we want.
Yeah. Well, teaching, you deal with a lot of interruptions, which you have to. It's your job.
I feel like you've approached a new phase, though, where you teach every opportunity that arises. Is that true?
Well, yeah, when, there's a topic that people want to know about and just the timing is right. And not too long ago, our friends wanted to talk about ocean painting. And they have had a lot of experience with it. Sure, it was just really fun to kind of go through it. And I started talking about stuff I forgot I knew.
So you did a demo for your friends about ocean painting.
Yeah.
That was so generous.
Well, it reminded me of things that I forgot I knew. And right now, there's the ocean behind us. But I started working on this pool scene because the umbrellas caught my attention.
The umbrellas caught your attention.
And this morning, the waves weren't doing that much. The light is better now. It's more to my liking now. But that was many hours ago.
Yeah. How many hours have you been working on this one, do you
I
think?
don't know, since about maybe 11 or noon.
I don't have my watch on me, but it's probably about 3:30 now.
Oh, okay, not too long. To me, I like to work oftentimes 5-6 hours on location.
Wow.
On a piece. Even though the sun is long gone, or the light is long gone, it's it works out for me because I have a way of kind of noting the composition from the start in a watercolor style, which I've talked about.
Yeah. Tell me a little more about that.
Well,
How you started.
I started, traditional watercolor technique. You work from you start with the lightest colors, and you work your way to the darkest colors, generally.
Light to dark. Yes.
And that's how I start oil paintings, with a really thin wash, and it behaves like a watercolor.
With the turpentine.
Yeah, right. The paint thinner is the water, and I do that because it sets up really quickly, and I use this fairly absorbent gesso that adds to it, and then on a hot day, it sets up immediately. And that way you're not slipping and sliding when you go to put oil on it.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, I think it's something you might enjoy.
I think I would too.
It's essentially combining the two ways
Yeah.
of working.
I've found that when I have switched back to oil painting after obviously years of just doing watercolor, I tend to want to start that way with a really thin wash, kind of an underpainting almost.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of reasons, advantages to it. The underpainting, it sort of sets your composition for you, and the light's going to change all day long. But once you have that, and it's your basic value structure, and you don't really, it doesn't bother you if the light changes.
So you're basically answering a question that most people will ask about plein air painting. How do you deal with it when the light changes and all the shapes are completely different from what you started with? You just said it at the beginning.
Yeah, that's really how.
Wow.
That's one way, and it just helps you remember the way it looked when you started.
Do you ever take pictures when you start too?
Sometimes. I'll take them. I almost never really look at them, but it's nice to have them in case. And I surely don't have any objection to using them. But you know, when you're out on location, it's fun to just take on the challenge of working unencumbered by photos.
I love that. How does being in the setting and hearing all the sounds and smelling all the things affect your painting, do you think?
It adds a richness to it, and it enriches my life, I'd say. Whereas, I mean, I do most of my work in the studio, but honestly, these are the ones that I remember. Like, I'll work for months on one painting in the studio and really not remember. The days run into a blur.
Wow.
I don't remember much. Not really. And but here's the reason I don't like to sell my on-location pictures, is because they're a diary of my life.
I can so relate to that.
Because, you know, you spend like 5 hours just looking at one scene, and you internalize it quite effectively, and you remember it way better than you would otherwise.
And no one else is going to remember it the way you do, having been the one painting it, having been the one who was there.
Yeah.
So in a way, maybe they won't ever be able to appreciate it the way you can.
And that's understandable. How could they?
Yeah.
But I just think it's a diary of my life. That's why I like to do this.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's one of the reasons. Another reason is that it's a skill builder. It puts you under pressure that you don't have when you're working in the studio.
So true.
And pressure. Although I don't feel any pressure today. How could I feel pressure when it's like this?
There's no pressure today.
There isn't. When you know the light's going to change when you start. That's all. There's a certain time pressure, but again, when you start with this kind of watercolor, what I call watercolor, it's oil paint solvent.
I'm following.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just helps you fix it in your memory, and I've been drawing long enough that I can distill a scene to its essence pretty quickly, and so it makes it a lot easier than it ever used to be for me. In fact, when I first started painting on location, it was kind of a dreadful experience.
Really? I was going to ask you if there's ever been a time where painting was difficult and uncomfortable and just not fun for you.
Yeah, it definitely. I mean, because it's incredibly frustrating when you can't.
That makes me feel so much better.
When you can't. Hello, Raj. We're doing an interview here. You want to stop and say hello?
Hi.
Hey.
You guys are so amazing. This is so much.
Isn't that so much fun?
Look at that sketch.
What? Oh, it doesn't look like Dan. I just got a little head.
Oh, it does.
That's pretty quick. Pretty quick.
So what was the most frustrating thing at first when you started doing plein air painting?
Just not understanding what I was seeing.
Yeah.
An artist had told me, he was teaching me, and he said, try to consolidate the thing into two values. And for the life of me, I couldn't understand what he meant.
Two values. That's difficult.
Yeah. Well, primarily two values. You have every value that there is, but it's primarily what I do is it's generally the light. Say in this case, it's the light, umbrellas, and the floor. Then everything else.
Yeah.
I make it a two-value picture with lots of nuances in the dark and light areas. But it's just predominantly a two-value picture.
So is this a rule that you, not a rule, but is this something you generally follow every time you are out plein air painting?
Well, it's something I follow with all my painting in the studio or anywhere, and more so over the years, because I find that say for example when I go to art museums, which I do a lot, the works that really make the most impression on me are pieces like Rembrandt and Caravaggio and Vermeer, and they're predominantly two-value pictures. Time after time. Those are the ones that are the strongest.
And that's what makes them so striking, I think, because...
It is. It's essentially, it's a compositional simplicity.
And now you're using your fingers.
Yeah, I'm removing paint.
Oh.
Because I realized I got the shadow in the wrong position.
Oh.
So, I mean, logically, at this point, I started it when the sun was bearing straight down, to tell you the truth. They're almost straight down. So this shadow, I had it in the wrong quite a bit.
Too far to the right?
Yeah, way in, pretty far off. But actually, I see that it's helping the composition anyway to scoot it in.
Yeah.
Because it'll get this S turn.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be nice.
That's so beautiful. And you've just captured the essence of this place already. I shouldn't say already, it's taken you some time, but...
Well, although I really do like to get the essence of it in the first half an hour.
Amazing.
Yeah, and like Sargent's watercolors, he would capture, you can tell he got the essence of the scene immediately. He had a tremendous skill for that, and that, I mean, he and I never talked, even before my time.
Yes.
And, but I have a strong sense that he squinted his eyes. And that is how you distill anything you're seeing, distill it to its essence. I think I just see the evidence of squinting much more in his work than anything that came before.
That's remarkable.
Squinting, it's a way of simplifying what you're seeing.
So I'm teaching my first international workshop this summer, and many of the artists, I think, well, probably most of the artists who are joining me are all beginners when it comes to painting from life. And so with that in mind, what would be the best advice you could give to these artists who are just starting out and maybe are feeling overwhelmed with all of the sensory overload that comes with traveling to a foreign country in the first place, and then sitting down and trying to figure out what to paint?
I'd say pick out something that's that when you squint at it, it has a relatively simple essence. It may be a complex subject, like a cathedral, or if you're going to Europe, or right here, it's extremely complex, the hillside and all the palms and everything.
Yeah.
But if you squint your eyes, it consolidates into like one big massive valley. And that, I think, if you can do that, it's going to provide a huge advantage.
That's great advice. Have you ever done value studies in the past?
Monochromatic?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, most of my artwork in this studio, I'll start out with just as monochrome.
Oh, just starting the whole painting that way?
A lot of times I do, like, especially something that's going to involve some, kind of critical drawing, like a portrait.
Okay, yeah.
And also put it on thick with a lot of texture.
Can't do that with watercolor, but
No.
yeah.
Yeah, texture's not a thing. Physical
No,
texture's not a thing
not
in
a
watercolor. Although a visual texture is.
Yes, it is. Yes.
What physical texture it's for the purpose of a visual texture. In a way, it's just a shortcut for detail and a way of suggesting detail. Like what I'll do, not in this picture, but say it's something that I know that's going to go on for a long time. The first day or two, I'll use the fastest drawing paint I can get and put it on in thick.
That's so interesting.
And like if there's a rough area, like say it's gravel or rocks or even grasses, I'll put it on really thick with a palette knife and pat it. And so that, you know how when you lift it, it leaves peaks.
It does, yeah.
Peaks all over the place. And then those respond really well to glazing and scumbling.
Oh, how cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of my favorite things about your paintings is all of that rich texture. And for those of you who are watching, if you've never seen a Dan Sprick painting in person, you can't miss it. You have to see it in real life. It's just not the same as seeing a picture.
Well, I appreciate that. It's there's a physical texture to it, and I've got into that more in the last recent years. For me, recent is like the last 20 years. Been doing this a long time.
20 years is recent.
That's pretty recent.
Wow, I feel like such a beginner.
I do too. I'm a beginner that's been doing this for 50 years.
Well said, yes. Never stop learning.
Every time I start a picture, I really don't know exactly what I'm doing. I like to, what I said earlier, set up a big value structure, but
it's a great way to start.
It's a start.
And that's all you can do is start and then figure out where to go.
It's a start, but it's not a finish.
But you have so many tools in your belt that you've developed over the years that can guide you in those decisions.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like oftentimes, with all my experience, I still don't know what I'm doing.
Well, I think that makes all of us feel better.
Yeah, I'm not the only artist who feels that way, and writers have said that too.
Yeah.
Start a novel and it's just like, written lots of novels, but he or she starts into it, has no idea where it's going or what to do.
That is
just persist.
Else. You just persist. Very good. So you grew up in Colorado, and what was one of your first art memories?
Well, pretty clear. When I was a little guy, really little, my father started me drawing.
Your father started?
And he wasn't an artist. But you don't really have to be an artist to get a kid going.
That's true. Just hand him a pencil.
Yeah, and he drew something that was impressive to me, and I've been drawing ever since.
Wow.
I feel pretty fortunate to have had that experience because it's like early language acquisition. Before you're 10 years old, you can learn things more easily. And I think, and you see that in sports.
Oh, for sure, in music.
Music.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard of it in art, but it's my... I have heard of it, and so has everyone else, like Leonardo da Vinci and Raphael and, the great artists of the Renaissance. They started when they were really young.
That is so fortunate and rare to have a parent who would encourage you from the start to pursue art, especially in our culture where art is considered a very, very... Well, we know it's a difficult pursuit, but not one necessarily that you can make money in, supposedly.
Yeah, it's usually, that's right. It's usually dismissed in that regard. But, that is the difference between Renaissance Italy and now is that, parents would throw their kids into these ateliers because, hey, you got to figure out how to make some money. And it was a job. It was a job, and there wasn't much emphasis on individual expression. It was really the purpose was to make things that were beautiful enough and to be worthy for God.
Yes.
And I think there's never been a time when beauty was so emphasized as it was.
In the Renaissance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in Baroque painting too, but I think and medieval, those manuscripts, manuscript illuminations. I mean, I think
Yeah, the church was paying for the artists to
Yeah.
create all this work.
the church. Yeah, that's
Is
right.
there any equivalent today?
I don't think anything that comes to that level. I don't, and especially for the purpose of beauty, great beauty. And those paintings were actually dictated by committee, and like you got to have this angel and this saint and this symbol, and it was a job, and it was more like craftsmanship. And I actually admire that because I find it kind of honest. The craftsmanship is it's unpretentious. It's not. It doesn't have this sort of the trappings of ego. It's just we're doing a job and we got to do it right. That was the emphasis. In the studios of Verrocchio and Pinturicchio, and that is where Leonardo da Vinci came up through those studios, and it's a teenager, like 12, 13. And
Well, just hearing you talk, I'm starting to hear some of your major influences coming out.
Sure.
The Sargent and the Renaissance artists.
Yeah.
Are there others that stand out to you when you think of the giants that went before you that inspire you each day?
There's a lot of obscure artists and artists that aren't in the art history books. For example, I do, as much as I love the Renaissance painting, I can't paint that way. and I don't think
Nor should you.
No. Like the 19th century naturalists that I talk about. There would be like, Bastien Lepage would be the most original, the earliest one I think of those, and he's well known for that Joan of Arc painting
Oh, yeah.
in the Metropolitan.
Yep, I know the one.
And there's Jules Breton. I can't pretend to speak French. Really, Tanya could help out with that.
Yeah.
The artist, well, I'll just phonetically sound it out in English since I don't speak French. Dagnon Bouveret. Dagnon.
That is an obscure artist. I haven't heard of that one.
And really beautiful. Bouveret. It sounds a little like Bouguereau.
Okay.
But it's Bouveret.
Bouveret.
That's one. There's an English artist called Stanhope Forbes, and there's a lot. I don't really have favorite artists as much as favorite paintings.
I like that. Yeah. Because every artist has great works and then some that are not so great.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Some kind of forgettable works. I quite love the works of Fantin Latour. Do you know his paintings, those flower paintings?
I think so,
Yeah, and his portraits are beautiful. There's Mary Cassatt. It was what I consider a really honest artist. She didn't really. She did children in an unsentimental way, and that's something I really quite appreciate.
So do you enjoy art? Like Mary Cassatt, I'm thinking of, she did a lot of paintings where they were just kind of doing things in everyday situations and just pulling beauty out of the mundane. Is that something that you appreciate?
I do. Of real ordinary situations. There's an artist, Rosa Bonheur, who did horses, really a lot of equestrian scenes in the 19th century. There's.
Do you enjoy painting horses?
I haven't even painted them. Hardly.
You've painted a lot of horse skeletons.
Yeah. But actual live horses, I've hardly done. Very little of
Really?
that. Very little.
Oh, I bet you would do such a beautiful
Yeah,
job.
I'd like to go and have them, kind of some sort of a halter rope to where they could feed or something, so they wouldn't move around.
Yeah.
Last summer, or whenever it was, last March, we painted cattle in India.
Oh, neat.
That were walking around the field, and they.
Was that
I
from
can't say
life?
it went that well from life, but they were moving the whole time.
Oh, that would be so hard.
Yeah, so I can't say it went that well, but it was fun to try.
Moving targets. My goodness.
Yeah, I painted them. I realized I got the proportions a little wrong. I made their legs too long. My cattle look more like horses.
I find that hard to believe, but
Well,
what are you doing here?
so I'm painting this because here I realize I'm trying to rationalize it when we have the extraordinary ocean right behind us. But
I don't think you need to rationalize that.
it's striking, lights and darks. That's about all I really.
Yeah. It's funny, when we walked into this club, my first thought was that you would probably be painting some umbrellas.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, you have pretty good.
Little radar for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Good psychic.
So you're using
ability.
really tiny brushes.
Yeah, and the worst brushes. I mean, it's so trashed out, and I don't know why. I have to sit down on a psychologist's couch, I think, to figure out why I do this. So I use the crappiest brushes.
The crappiest brushes.
Yeah, and so I have some good ones. This is a good brush.
Okay. Well, see, this is good advice for viewers who are always thinking they need to buy the best brushes or the best paints.
They won't.
Really
They
not.
won't put the right color in the right place.
There's no point.
And that's so mixing colors. That's real important. And you got to get them from here to here.
Yeah.
And whatever gets there, it can be cotton
be your
swabs, your fingers. It
Yeah.
can be
I love that.
really
that is-
crummy brushes.
So how did you start to develop your style of sketching first and then painting? Because not many artists do that.
What first, guessing?
Sketching first and
Sketching.
then painting.
Sketching. Oh, you mean sketching on right on?
Yeah, because I haven't seen too many oil painters who do that.
I don't understand why they don't. But I like some structure to start with, and have an idea where I'm going with it. We were talking about it with Anna about just putting, big massive color on the lights first, even, and then getting some darks and support it. I think it'd be fun just to do it.
Just to try it?
Yeah, but I think, well, on the other hand, I think painting's difficult to begin with. Why would you make it more difficult for yourself?
That is such a good point. I agree. I can relate to your approach. Yeah, makes so much sense to lay out your structure first.
And the composition, with figure drawing and painting, I'm always working out the drawing first. So, not a detailed drawing, just the basic proportions.
Do you think you'll ever do a solo show of your plein air paintings?
Well, I actually did once.
Oh, you did?
I have. I do that. I did it it was called the Museum of Outdoor Arts in Denver.
When was that?
It was probably about 2016.
2016. Okay.
And I think you and Anna were probably in Denver by then.
Yeah, I just joined the Art Student League group with Kwong that year. I was very pregnant with my son when I showed up and painted with the group for the first time. I think maybe it's time for another one. What do you think?
I would do it again. I was kind of coming under pressure to sell those pictures, and I didn't want to because they're my a record of my life.
Yeah, these are your babies.
And when I can remember how so much more from, like today, I will remember the air temperature, the food, the conversations. Remember everything. And most of my life, I don't remember. But this is sort of internalized.
Yeah.
And so, and of course, it's a very pleasant experience. It's kind of like, you know, heavenly.
I love that. So you won't sell your plein air paintings because they're a diary of your life. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just the information is, and the learning experience is just worth more to me than the money I would get out of it.
So valuable.
That's generally how I feel about it.
So many of my students are just not convinced of the necessity to paint from life, or they're just too afraid of it, I think. And I keep trying to convince them to give it a try.
Well, I can appreciate why they're afraid of it, because it's incredibly frustrating and it takes years. To me, this is the hardest kind of painting to learn. Landscape painting in general, even from photographs in the studio, I think it's the hardest thing to learn. But once you kind of get ahead of the curve a little bit, it's also one of the most gratifying things you can do. But that's the way, you know, the things we appreciate the most are the things we have to work the hardest for.
I agree. What is your goal with your life as an artist? And I've asked you this before, but I'd love to hear it again.
I do know what my goal is, and it's pretty simple, really. Whether it's painting on location or in the studio, still life, no matter what the subject. My goal is to generate a harmony of composition of, you know, big shapes, you know, placement intervals, rhythms, and set up a rhythm that may even evoke something greater than the experience itself, or than the visual scene. A rhythm that wasn't even didn't exist.
So making something more beautiful than the real thing.
Make it more beautiful than it really is. You know, sometimes you don't have to, but almost don't. Usually, I'd say there's, you know, I'd say God did a pretty good job with creating nature, but we could always use improvement.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a very assertive thing to say.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. Me and
But I have to agree.
Me and God, we're a team, you know.
There's a lot of chaos in the world too, and a lot of mess and a lot of disorder, and artists were put here, I think, to put back that order.
Well,
to bring
you know,
some of that beauty
that's
back.
my purpose, is to generate a form of beauty that wasn't there before. And I can't replicate the beauty of, you know, of Rocky Mountain National Park or Niagara Falls. But I can sort of do my own variation on it.
Yeah.
We do something different. That it's a different kind of beauty. I don't think we can improve on it. It's that, but we can do something that's kind of compact and small, and we can do something that wasn't there.
Yeah.
And you know, just some of it's just a slight elongation of the shape of a mountain or an umbrella or whatever is in front of us.
So you work from imagination all the time.
I do. That reality is a starting point, and I consider myself a realist, but I do like to make variations on it.
What are some things we can do as beginners to foster imagination in our paintings? Are there small ways that we can start to introduce it that feel a little more approachable than, you know,
Well,
perhaps?
you know what the things I'm talking about, tell you the truth, they're pretty advanced. And it's too much to think about for a person who's beginning. Beginning, I would think about spheres and cubes and cones.
Yeah.
And those are the most important things. Everything else is built out of that. I mean, these umbrellas, they're pyramids, a type of pyramid, just for example. And you know, the chairs, they're types of, you know, they're planes and boxes and things like that, parallel planes. There's circular forms become elliptical, and I think you need to really understand linear perspective.
So it involves putting in a lot of time on those basics first.
It does, but you can learn it pretty fast. And really, I think a lot of artists don't take linear perspective seriously. And I suspect the reason might be is that it's so self-evident and so obvious that people don't take it seriously.
And we should.
It's vital to getting things to look right. That's I don't know if it's true. It's just something I suspect.
I suspect the same. I can speak from personal experience.
Honestly,
I haven't taken it as seriously as I should.
it's so simple and self-evident. It's just anybody knows what railroad tracks look like, and that's essentially that's linear perspective right there, 1-point perspective. When you're standing on tracks and looking down the length toward the horizon.
See the distant horizon. What is this color you just put on your palette?
Oh, it's this medium that dries fast.
Oh, it's a medium.
That I'm stirring into the paint, and this particular stuff it really dries too fast. So you only use a little bit at a time.
Okay, so does that help with the plein air process with oil painting?
It does if you're used to it. Some artists, very good, very talented artists, may hate it because it just depends what you're used to. But I find it's really helpful for building layers. I was talking about this, what I call watercolor technique.
Yeah.
See, for that to work out, you want it to set up immediately so that you can apply your oil paint on top of it. Essentially, it provides coverage. Like if you have all your values there, then it's really easy to make your subsequent values cover. Like house paint, you worry about, you're concerned about cover, real solid coverage.
Yep.
And it's true in this too. I like to start, working from the lightest to the darkest.
Lightest to darkest.
But then I change the approach entirely by working from the most distant to the closest.
Oh, that makes sense.
And the reason I do is like with these palm trees and foliage and so forth back here, I wanted to just be able to get it on there without having to carefully work around something that's finished.
Yeah.
And it's easy and expeditious. And the reason I think that's important is because there's so much to do that I want to be efficient out on location.
That makes so much sense. If you had the umbrellas already perfectly painted, you'd have to paint the trees around them and you'd mess up all your edges.
Yeah. And I like to get a lot of gradations. So I can do that by working from back to front much more easily. Because with gradations, I might be slopping it with a big brush, and I don't have to be careful about messing anything up.
How do you put gradation in this one? I'm curious.
Well, now this one doesn't have a lot of gradations.
There is some gradation of color.
Yeah, there's this. Mostly this background, which I ended up spending more time on than I expected.
And it's a fabulous background. Look at those palm trees. Oh, that foliage and texture. It really captures the essence of the place.
I just realized I'm going to change this color and get a little bit of green in it. A little more green. I think that'll actually look good.
That's the nice thing about working on the background is you can kind of cover up those foreground umbrellas a little and yeah,
and
redraw them.
And I do make some exceptions to the back to front because sometimes I will have neglected things in the background. I have, after having finished a foreground item, so go back into it. But so I can't always do that. But most of the time, life is a lot simpler if I can. Yeah, I think this, I like having this green in the building back
That
here.
looks so good. I never would have thought to even add that color.
Well, it's, when I talk about, I'm not so concerned with painting exactly what exists as much as making I hope, trying to make an exquisite color harmony and make things unified and make things sometimes more beautiful than they really are.
It really is so harmonious. I think the temptation for a beginner would be to go in and add all these yellows and pinks and, all the colors of the flowers and ferns
And making it more complicated than it really needs to be.
and almost garish in those colors then.
Well,
But this is so uniform.
in fact, this is pretty much it's not only a two-value picture, it's pretty much almost a two-color picture.
Almost, yeah.
there's-
Just green and white.
Yeah, it's green and it's kind of yellowish. It's a really simple pattern of warm and cool.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And
Do you still plan on including the chairs in the front?
yeah, I'm trying to figure that if I want these parts in shadow or in light.
Oh,
I still haven't made a
that's
decision
all
on
changed, doesn't it?
that. Yeah, so I mean, I can do, plausibly do it however I want to. But, I like have some shadows of palm trees or something obscuring it. In fact, that's what I'm going to do, is have them
That's brilliant.
kind of dappled. So I'm going to do that right now. A malt stick is part of my, just an extension of my left
It
hand.
really is. Every time I see you, you're holding a mall stick.
Yeah. I don't know how artists live without them. Well, I'm a little shaky, and I need some stabilization too. That's a part of it. It's just kind of a neurological thing, I guess. But
One would never know.
well, that helps stabilize quite a bit. Sign painters use mall stick quite a bit, and surgeons. So it's a job where you really need a stable, steady hand.
Was there ever a time when you were a younger artist that you went through a difficult phase financially or that you struggled as an artist?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, at least the first 10 years of my painting.
10 years.
Yeah,
That's a long stretch.
It is. You work a long time with no promise of ever actually making money.
So what pushed you to keep going?
Why did I keep going? Well, I goofed off in high school and burned all my bridges of. It was too late to go to medical school or engineering or law school or anything like that. So, those are things that I admire and I like. I mean, I have had a lot of. I could be really interested in engineering, but you know what?
Seems to me the world's a better place because you did goof off and didn't go to law school.
Well, I appreciate that.
But that's tough when you're struggling financially to.
It is hard. So I didn't start a family till I was in my 30s.
Okay.
And so all my 20s were spent it's a high anxiety thing too, not knowing if you're going to pay your rent.
Yeah.
I'd spend a few summers living in my car, that kind of thing.
What? In your car?
I have.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Oh my
and
gosh.
just hitchhiking. And, I had to have jobs for a while, and then
I think that is why so many artists tend to make it their side job or their side hobby, because they are afraid of relying solely on it.
Well, in fact, when I first started, I thought I would be basically a squatter in the woods with a tent, and that would be my life. And
You went into it knowing or believing that this was your future. squatting in a
I had
tent?
no idea that there would be money in this. I assumed that there would not be.
Wow.
I was pretty sure there would never be.
But you loved it so much that you persisted.
The money actually started happening as a surprise.
Well, that's a wonderful surprise.
Yeah, and of course, it's nice to get paid, and it does make your life a lot easier and easier to do your future work.
Yes, it does. Did you ever have to get a quote-unquote job at some point?
Well, I had some jobs for a while. My best, most serious job was doing metal work. I was a welder for.
Oh, you were a welder.
I took training, a year of training as a welder, and I really liked that work actually. And I also studied auto mechanics, but you know, I didn't reach. I didn't really get much beyond amateur quality, to tell you the truth. I never made it, to professional levels. With the welding I did, I was qualified to do, what they call certified welding, certified destructive test welding, where it's like you weld pieces of steel together, and then it's pulled apart in a machine that's intended to destroy the weld. It's a test.
Whoa.
And it has to break somewhere besides the weld.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
So your weld has to be so good that.
The weld has to be stronger than the rest of the steel.
Amazing.
There's a lot of satisfaction in that.
Yeah, I can see that. And you said you were interested in engineering, and as an artist, you've had to create and build a lot of things throughout your career. Is that true? What are some of the creations that you've come up with?
Well, I just, like household construction type things, and furniture, or easels and things.
Well, some of your paintings are so huge that you've had to construct basically your own way to paint on them.
I've built a lot of easels, and that's fun. But that's hobby stuff. And I do have a lot of tools and everything for that. But it's...
but surely some of these early jobs informed that.
Oh, they really have.
Yeah.
And
what was the biggest painting you ever did?
The biggest stuff I've done is about 7 by 12 feet. Yeah.
7 by 12 feet.
And I do like doing those.
Wow.
And I'd like to do some more.
Was that one collected?
Yeah.
What
I
was
did
it
a series of them, actually. They were of biblical subjects.
Oh.
And that commission, there were commission works, and that kind of ended. And so, and I haven't had anything like that again. I would like to do some more huge things, but honestly, I don't know where I'm going to put them when they're done. And,
you have a big studio, but those were massive.
But so that's, but I mean, that hasn't stopped me from doing things anyway.
Yeah.
And maybe if you build it, they will come.
This has been such a lovely conversation.
Good. Yeah, really
I'm enjoying
nice.
this so much.
Good. Same here. Same here. I didn't know if I'd be able to actually articulate that. It's going good, huh?
Well, we've touched on a lot of the things. I think something Raj asked me the other day, he asked me what my viewers are really interested in. And I said, a lot of times they really want to hear professionals, have they ever struggled, or if they've had difficulty in their art, because sometimes it comes across as so easy for those of us who've done it for a long time, or and so for beginners it can be very discouraging. And so what encouragement do you have for those who are struggling right now?
Well, you know what? It's a war of attrition. The ones who make it at artists aren't necessarily the most talented. It's the ones who just flat will not give up.
And that should be really encouraging for those of us who maybe aren't as talented, or...
Some of the more talented people get bored because they're not challenged. And they don't persist. They don't. They would be challenged if they tried harder, but because for that there's no limit. But I think that it's true of so many domains.
I think that's true too. The harder you work, the better you will get. Just don't give up.
Yeah, and yet it work often enough to remember yesterday's mistakes, kind of thing, and try to make new ones today.
That's a good point. Come
Yeah.
back at it soon after you've made some mistakes and
Yeah,
before you forget about it.
yeah. You do have to work constantly, I think, to remember what you learned last time.
Have
That's
you
all
ever
there
had
is to
days
it.
where you weren't able to paint and you just felt like you were missing something?
Yeah, I have, for sure. There are days when it's really hard to force myself to paint. I mean, I certainly go through that like other people. It's not just, constant euphoria. Some of it's kind of, it's kind of, difficult and painful, and you just like,
So what have you
just have to
discovered when you
persist.
did force yourself to sit down and paint? Was it
What happened? That if you're standing there with a paintbrush in your hand, things are more likely to happen than if you're not.
so true?
So pretty simple logic.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, it's with any profession, it's persistence. It's just damn persistence that you, and the only way you can be persistent though is to have some sort of a belief that you're able to do this, that it is going to pay off eventually.
That's a good point.
Yeah, you gotta have some sort of, a combination of humility and arrogance. of thinking that
I've never heard that before.
yeah,
Combination of humility
because
and
they're so contradictory opposites.
Yeah.
They actually need to be. I think it's only wise to be modest on the outside, but in inside have pretty powerful dreams and beliefs and a belief that things are possible.
I love that.
And that somewhere, somehow, in spite of a lot of failures, things are possible, and it is going to get better. Otherwise, I don't know how you could persist.
I don't either. So that's a hope piece, isn't it?
The hope piece.
Hope
That-
and
that-
persistence.
And a belief that genuine beauty is possible and attainable in our time, even in view of the greatest artistic accomplishments of all time. There's still growth that's possible.
And to believe that you yourself have something to offer in addition to all of that
I
beauty
think
that's
you do.
already out
You need
there.
to.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful.
Okay.
Thank you so much for chatting with me today. I
Okay.
enjoyed this so much. I always learn a ton every time I hang out with you.
No,
And it is just such a privilege to be here with you.
I feel the same way. That it's. I was thinking. I've noticed over the last few days. I just love it if we're involved with these people forever.
I would love
All
that
these
too,
people.
forever.
Forever. Because it is just so rewarding and so much fun, and to spend time with artists who and not have to justify what you're doing,
That's right.
justify or explain or make excuses or feel like you're so self-absorbed, which we are, but at least.
It is one of those few professions that I feel is very hard for most people to understand.
It is because we are fundamentally self-absorbed. Because it's a solitary trip in the end. And no matter how much camaraderie and shared experience that we have, it's still, you're still quite alone in your search.
I wondered how you were going to do the dappled light. And now I'm seeing it.
Kind of like that, and
Yeah.
I think some more of it around would offset these geometric shapes.
Wow. I see that. So it's almost forming an angle too with the placement of those.
Yeah, get some cast shadows from trees.
It's very cool. Well, Dan, thank you so much for chatting with me
All
today.
right. Well,
My viewers are going to love this interview.
well, that's so cool. I've seen some other things of yours, and I thought that you just have a wonderful stage presence and
Thank
speaking
you.
voice, and
That's
you
sweet of
make
you.
you make it really encouraging for your viewers.
That's my goal. I know I'm not going to be the greatest artist that ever walked the planet, but I would love to leave a legacy of beauty on the earth by sharing what I do know with those who can learn from me. So,
Yeah,
as I know you do too.
You're doing it in a great way.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
This was wonderful. I'll let you finish your painting.
we're having fun here.